Well, then, we were already rolling on the inauguration episode of This is the Year. This is the podcast where we believe we would like to deep dive into many, many different topics in the realm of artificial intelligence, especially if you consider building on AI, either within your business or you're maybe even launching your AI agency and you're implementing such solutions into businesses in Switzerland and all around the world. I'm joined today by two of my fellow gentlemen, AI enthusiasts yourself, Bene and Joao. Happy to have you in this very first inauguration episode. And how are you guys doing? A lot of things happening. I think last time we saw each other, you, Bene, gave the show actually the name, This is the Year. Yeah. Maybe just for the audience, why is this the year? Why did we choose this name for this podcast?
Because this year, there's a lot of things happening on AI, and I think deeply this is the year of make it or break it for a lot of AI products and things to be applied. Yes.
Why do you believe, what changed maybe this year? Because I was thinking to myself as well, last year I thought it's the year. In 2023, when I started building on image systems, mostly I thought that was the year. But what was actually changing in 2025?
I think the maturity of the models, they started to reach a point, and business already they start to implement a few cases, and there's a lot of POCs and MVPs going on. And this year that actually some of the products are already being deployed on production and being applied, and there's a lot of use cases to go on and on. So this is if you want to make something happen with AI and develop and apply products, there's a lot of things going on. A lot of the models itself, they are also getting better, and they can do shit that that wasn't being done in the previous years.
Good. Thank you, Bennett. What do you think, Joao? Is this the year or is it next year?
2022, at the end of 2022, back in November, ChatGPT launched, and most people didn't even hear about it because it wasn't a big thing then. And then 2023 was the year for ChatGPT, and everyone was getting onto it, and it got a lot of popularity. People just really, really liked it. And the model behind it, GPT 3.5, was, good at the time, but not comparable to what we have today. 2024, a lot of models from a lot of different companies, everyone, big companies and medium companies, were trying to launch their own models, try to come up with ways to use them. And now 2025, we're getting to a place where we can actually use them in production and make sure these systems work. And we can start sometimes replacing whole departments by this software, Gen AI enabled software. And you have really, really good models at really cheap prices. And just have all the tools now. I think companies are just fighting to have a budget to launch this kind of project. They want to invest, they want to build this kind of things. I still think it's kind of recent, and not a whole lot of people know how to build them. And so I see online a lot of forums, from the engineering side, people asking and trying to figure out how to build the systems consistently so that they get really good answers all the time. And right now, I think I have a really good select number of people that know how to build this kind of things. And when they build them and they work, you get a lot of value for what you're paying for. You pay cents on these calls, and you get work that will take you hours of people that cost you sometimes hundreds of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So it's a really good cost efficiency in terms of work.
I can only agree. I think our notion when we started in 2023 was more should we even be charging anybody to get any solution out of an AI system? In that case, it was more photo image generation, and we believed that the models weren't there. In 2023, 2024, it started to be better. But I think in 2025, why this is the year, especially for businesses, is just because the systems became so good they could potentially replace certain individuals, certain verticals, aka the agents. Is probably one of the most used topics here, but it is probably true that a lot of the job functions can be agentized in 2025. That's something we're building, and that's truly probably why this is the year. So let's get started, guys. Just a few things. We have a few things on the topics for this particular week. I was trying around a little bit with GPT-4.5 that recently arrived in Switzerland. There's many other models that came out very, very recently. I don't know, Ben, if you want to elaborate on one or two that you've used? Have you used ChatGPT 4.5? Are you super happy about it? Or have you seen some other models, just generally speaking?
No, regarding let's say the three main launches that happened recently, the Cloud 3.7 from Anthropic, GPT 4.5 and Grok 3. From those three, the one that I like the least and I used not that much, it was Grok 3. It was very Americanized text. The Cloud 4.7, since developer, I use it quite often. It has improvement from 3.5. It's not a game changer improvement, but it's better. It can do more things quicker. GPT 4.5, I haven't used as much as I would like to, because for these non-reasoning models, normally I just use mainly for coding, and for that I use Claude 3.7.
What about you, Joao? Any usage of the newer models that just came out, be it, for example, 4.5 or any other one?
Yeah, there's this like trend now that they can't scale their models more. Like they just don't have GPUs. It gets extremely expensive to build them. So we're getting like 3.7 and 4.5 from OpenAI. These models are like really, really close to reasoning models, right? And they got really good answers. And if you run the benchmarks, like the companies love to show off like the benchmarks that they're getting out of these models, and that's all fine and like it looks amazing on a PowerPoint. But if in day to day, you don't really need a reasoning model for your like day to day questions. So like you want an email, you can just write me an email. If you want us to ask a question like what happened back in this year in France, and you can just ask it. And it can search the web and give you the answer, and it doesn't need that reasoning that much. So I've been using Claude 3.7 has this duality. It's like you can use it as a normal LLM and just get the answer as fast as possible, or have like this reasoning component to it, and it starts to think and like elaborate on a plan to answer you and give you like the best possible answer. And there's been times where I had like really tough questions. I wanted them to solve, like it's still faster than if I were to do it manually. So I use the thinking component of 3.7. But most of times I'm using like this normal LLM, like 3.7 without the thinking component, or the GPT-4.0 without the like that reasoning out of it, because it does like it feels less like a chat and more like a request you want to know the answer for. So yeah,
Maybe
I mean that's been my
That
usage.
also brings us a bit to the model choice when you're architecting, right? Like, what are maybe some of the trade-offs you guys are thinking about? Like, if you can, for example, use larger models or a smaller model, like what are the trade-offs maybe if you're wanting to build, if somebody is in the audience that is aiming to build a solution based on AI, how do you choose your model? Like, based on what parameters? Meaning if it's cost, if it's quality, or is there any other way of choosing the right models for your use case?
It depends. Again, it depends a lot on the use case. First, you need to evaluate the language. Language is very important. And if it's more niche market, you should try to benchmark and see the tests and the training data on that specific language to see the output. And then mainly it's just efficiency. It's a trade-off of quality and pricing. That's how much you're willing to pay or not. And it depends a lot on even on the same use case. You can, for bigger things, you can use a more expensive and better quality model. And for some smaller tasks, you can use a cheaper model that would do it properly. It's just a matter of structuring the architecture.
Yeah, I mean
Maybe on that side now, Joao, what's your take on, let's say, architectural choices here?
you have these two kinds of models coming out, like the reason models and the normal LLMs, let's call them. But even inside LLMs, you have like a wide variety. Sometimes you might think, okay, so I'll use the latest, most recent model. That sounds like the best one, right? That has the best benchmarks. But then when you look at the prices are varying very wildly. And there's a lot of factors into it. It depends on like where you want to run them. If you want to run them in Switzerland, you're kind of constrained to what GPUs and like what data centers you have in Switzerland. Not all models are here yet. What if you want to run them like you don't care and you can run them from like the US where you have a lot of computing power? And so like that's a big factor, and you have to choose the models because the menu of the models you have changes. Like they launch OpenAI. Like yeah, I think it's if not number one, like one of the major biggest companies within Gen AI launching these models. GPT-4.0, 4.5 that they just launched. You might think, okay, I'll use that one. They're the biggest company, the latest model. Let's use that one. And look at the prices, and it's insanely expensive. And it's not worth the price to use in a normal solution. Again, I'm using the prices as the time of the recording. They may change in the future, but it really isn't a cost-effective solution. So like, look at the prices. Look at different companies. Like Google also has a really good solution. Anthropic has a really good solution. Check them all out and see what you have available and what your pricing budget is.
I think it's a truly important point for businesses. I believe there is a conundrum that the latest model is always the must-have and the go-to model you should have in Switzerland, which comes at the trade-off that either it's not available or it's incredibly expensive. So for businesses building on AI, I think model choices, especially not having a huge dependency on one provider only, is something they need to be aware of. I mean, if you're really building only on Azure, or maybe you're fully locked into OpenAI, Anthropic launches a really good one, maybe Mistral is launching a really good one, you don't have the flexibility and to be really switching just basically gears and going on another engine if you're going into this locked-in state. Maybe again, I've dropped Mistral. I think they launched a really interesting model with OCR, just one of the use cases. I think both of you, we've had multiple discussions together on OCRs, like what's the problem behind that? Can you maybe quickly elaborate just for the audience? What is OCR? What's the problem there? Maybe before this model dropped, what was like existing in all the businesses? And then maybe what Mistral OCR is trying to solve?
They are not the first ones to launch this kind of model, but right now it is the best model for this. And so if you're a business and you want to build a Gen AI solution, you want them, the model, whatever model you choose, you want them to know everything about your business, right? Like you want them to be the equivalent of the guy you have there for 10 years or 15 years. And that's really hard to do because you don't want to spend time like training these models and building your own model. That's insanely expensive. And so most of the times you need to have your data, have all the data on your company, and feed it selectively to the model as you ask it questions. So you ask questions about, like, let's say you're hiring someone. You want to add some information about your HR policy. What about the department that the person's going to work in? And most of that information in the companies and around the world, like I think around 90% of it is PDFs. Like it has been for a long time. People love using PDFs. That and Excel sheets. But for this kind of information, like on policies and real information, it's PDFs, and they're really hard to get information out of because you have text, you have images and graphs, and so you just can't, there's no PDF input for these models. You can just give them text. So you have to figure out a way to convert all those complicated PDFs into text. And finally, you had some solutions, but they failed most of the times if the PDF was scanned, for example. And a lot of the PDFs you have are like photos of something, photos of a memo, something that someone scanned once, that people use. And you can read it just fine, but you can't get text out of it super easily, like programmatically. And so these models, what to do is like you give them the PDF and they'll give you all the text on it, all the images on it, all the graphs on it, like separate in a very structured way. And so you can easily build these kind of solutions where you have your model, your super fancy LLM, with the information from your business. And they're no longer PDFs, they're like raw text that you can use.
I mean, some, just like from the top of my head, business use cases, especially in Switzerland, sometimes we call this country a bit of a paper country. There's many papers around, especially in banking, in insurance, in lawyer, close and proximate businesses. I believe this is really a gate opener for many of the use cases that were so far not being possible. For example, compliance, you get all the customer data back in form of, like, for example, questionnaires, or you have to send out questionnaires, you scan them in. And so far, this was like a closed system because you couldn't really touch the data. But I think with these latest models, let's say from Mistral, for example, that dropped just a few days ago, I think these things are really becoming available. Would you say this is a tool for an agent, Joao, or would you be setting that up as a different agent? Like, how do you believe these OCR use cases are coming into architecture?
I think it'd be part of a bigger system, right? For example, you use a lot of paper, and you use a lot of paper admissions in hospitals and healthcare. Like you have to write your own form, and you have to write your name and your address and all of this information in specific fields. And most of the solutions so far were like you had some OCR software that would kind of read what you wrote so they can input it in their system. Because eventually it has to end up in some kind of database. Either it's some intern writing them manually or like an OCR system that does automatically, but you have to copy what's on the paper to the database. And so far, if you change the form, if you just had like change out the fields or add a new field, you had to change your OCR software and had like a whole new thing. It'd be a lot of work. And right now, because you have these models, like they don't care what the format is, they can just see what it is, and they can reason about it and say, oh, this is where the name goes, and this is what the person wrote. That's the name. And you can just ask them, hey, give me all the like, key value pairs, like the name of the field and the information on that field. And it's super, super easy now to build those kinds of solutions where you read what's on the paper and you no longer have to rely and keep relying on paper.
I think it's a really powerful, just change of, let's say, idea that we can have access to all this data. But I do believe I saw the stats, so it's like 90+% of business knowledge or insights is somewhere on some documents. I don't know if that's true for all the countries and all the contexts, but it seems to be like a heavy load of business know-how and knowledge is not fully documented somewhere for the AI to be consumed. I don't know, Bene, if you've played around with OCR before even Mistral came out, or with other models, or what's your take, especially if you want to be, as a business, using these models.
Yes.
What are some use cases from your perspective?
There's a lot of use cases for this. I'm a bit... I didn't have time to fully check and investigate Mistral OCR, so I'm a bit static on that, because I did try and I did build solutions with vision, and the vision so far hasn't been great. It hasn't been especially on OCR and documents. And mainly I used Abby. Abby is the most advanced OCR engine software and company that does that, and they're already implementing some, when I was using it, some AI. Like there's so many use cases, for instance, for normally within the company financial department, they have to sometimes gather the invoices from people to put through their system and then to approve the expense. And this is a use case with Mistral. If everything is great as it's advertised, this can be fully automated with the agent, and the HR or financial people, they won't have to waste time on some monotonous task. They can be useful to do more things.
Yeah, I do believe it's one of the bigger, probably multi-million opportunity in Switzerland.
Yes.
In AI. Like if you come up with a proper use case and you can properly engineer an AI agent that uses these OCR, let's say, layers, and you can consume a particular set of let's say, you just mentioned, maybe in healthcare, maybe compliance, maybe insurance, and you can really scale that up to multiple businesses in Switzerland. I think that's a huge opportunity, not only for businesses to save money, because this is currently a cumbersome process, but also for agencies or SaaS interested people to actually be building and leveraging OCR. I think it's, when you sent me the model, I was a bit surprised, because I think, Bene, we talked about that, I think in December or something.
Yeah.
And you were like, this is never going to work. OCR is a huge pain. And then sometimes there's like this model coming out. So like it just shows the pace as well. Like, what do we have now? Now we have mid-March basically, and there seems to be somewhat of a frontier-ish solution on that problem. So that's why this is the year. That's why it's really excited to be in AI. Maybe another segue quickly I would want to do is Joao, we mostly talked about frameworks. Like most of them are either called LangChain, LangGraph, like all these different types of frameworks. Like, can you maybe elaborate quickly on what's your understanding of them? Which one would you prefer using, especially if you're just a business tinkering around with AI, or do you believe you should be using none, build your own, or what's your mental model currently there?
I mean, building your own is a really, really good way to like spend the hours of the developers and like become you just end up with a really, really expensive solution. So if you want to blow your budget, then it's a really good opportunity for you. But right now we're having like...
so it's definitely not recommended, Schwab.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
It is sarcasm. Right now you have a lot of frameworks, and there's has been a thing in the computer science world where even in the front end, like building websites, there used to be like a framework of choice, and then people got tired of it, like, oh, this is too complicated, and they built a new one. But it doesn't have all the features. And by the time they add all the features, it's just as complicated or more than the last one. So they would do another one. And so you just keep building new frameworks. And this happened for the last 15 years in web development, and now it's happening with AI. And so you can still, like with the models, jump to the latest one. Like, oh, this is the next big thing because the site looks really cool and the documentation seems just right. But right now, the biggest, for now, the biggest platforms and biggest frameworks for building Gen AI solutions is LangChain and Pydantic AI. Like Pydantic is a really big framework in Python. It's like the main language to build anything Gen AI right now. It's just a super easy, super approachable language. You have a lot of people that know it and can build on it. And like this guy that built Pydantic, that's been used for decades, that's not related to AI, built a whole new package for Gen AI around like this really known thing. And so then there you have layers, right? Like, because it depends on how complicated you want to make it, how custom you want to make it. You can have LangChain or Pydantic AI to connect to the models. And today you can connect to GPT 4.5 or 4.0, and you build your solution on it. And these frameworks allow you to, tomorrow, like there's a new model, you can just change and start using and drop Claude 4.0 whenever it comes out. And you can change it in 2 lines of code. And everything else stays the same because you don't have to change anything else. So like this is like the main value of these frameworks, is that they don't give you this vendor lock-in. Like, so you don't have to use the same model forever. You can just keep changing with the times because there will be new models. And then you have like frameworks that are a step above that, like LangGraph. You have CrewAI, you have AutoGen. I think for now, LangGraph is by far the biggest one and the most used one. And is like a way for you to build multiple agents, right? If ChatGPT was the equivalent of like a person in your company, then LangGraph allows you to build a whole department. You can have like an agent that builds the documents, another agent that reviews the documents and critiques it. There's another agent that actually searches for information for documents so they can like reference real things in your company, so you don't have like false information. You can have like these multi agents that each do each different thing, and then LangGraph allows you to connect them all and have them talk to each other. And at the same time, they give you all the benefits. Like in business, you want to see what's happening. So like all the observability, all the traceability, all the logs that you want them to have for like compliance reasons. You have that baked in. So you don't have to spend countless hours in engineering, like writing code and set checking if all the logs are there. These frameworks give you that. And so you go from having to write a lot of code to being able to launch these kind of solutions in a couple of weeks. So I think
saying like it is a good solution for Swiss businesses to use LangChain, LangGraph, or should they rather just be using no-code, low-code agent connectors? Like, because there's something I see all the time in Switzerland, but around all the social media, like you can literally build multi-agent systems, fairly apparently elaborate, just no-code and low-code ways. Like, what if that's the case, why should you still be using, as a Swiss business or as a Swiss entrepreneur that's aiming to launch AI solutions, LangChain or LangGraph? Like, what's the trade-offs there? Maybe Ben, Joao, both of you. What's
like
your take
I can just ask you one thing. Which is the tool, low code, that everyone uses that's perfect for every business? It's something that companies make to sell, and it's easier for a quick solution, but not for a permanent solution. So if you want to build a product and a solution that does a lot of things, and normally that's the use cases, you want something more, and you need some developer, and that's why you need more coding. If it's something, let's say, quick, without like much maintenance, of course you can use those platforms. That will ease up a lot of the workload. But still, if you want to build a product, a stable solution, you need to go with code.
Yeah, I mean,
same for you, Joao, or you have a different opinion?
the no code or like low code solutions are really good for like to help you specifically. I'd say you get like a deal memo in your company and you want to build out an email. So you get like these websites and these platforms, and you can build something that helps you write the email, right? And so you save a few hours of your day or of your week. And that's a really good solution. Like GenAI is actually helping you. Thing is, if you want to have a solution that reads all the emails for you and builds out reads the deal memos or builds out those emails, fills out the forms that need to be filled automatically, and it's working like 24/7. It doesn't need human input. You can have human supervision, but it doesn't need humans there. Then you need to have like a proper solution, and it's usually custom because these low code, no code solutions, they won't integrate with your own data, with your own platforms. Like each company is doing like they're running off Gmail, but they're also using SharePoint to save the files. They're using some kind of like CRM, like very custom CRM, because those are very expensive. And once you choose one, you can't really keep changing every year. And so you have multiple softwares as a company. And you find a solution that can go to each one of them and read information and interact with each one of them. It's probably for the best to have a custom solution, because I find it very hard that a no-code or low-code solution will actually be able to connect to all those different softwares. Like maybe eventually, but this is not the year for that. This is the year for like custom production-ready solutions, and they're not that hard to build.
I do believe
if
that's
you know.
the case. I mean, most of the time it's just like they have some sort of like set of requirements, and then it's like, okay, but it has to be Swiss hosted, it has to be super secure, it has to be somewhat guardrailed, and it has to be having disparate. Like it just adds up on the requirements, because usually in Switzerland, it's a fairly regulated country, especially depending on the industry. So yes, the low code, as you pointed out, Ben, maybe it could be used for like a proof of concept, just to maybe validate a business idea or some sort of in-house solution, maybe for some job vertical as well. So you can replace or at least augment a particular employee. But then when it goes more into the systems and it needs to consume a particular set of data within a company, super secure, somewhere hosted that makes sense, I believe it's currently a bit, I would say, difficult to just go with low code. I do believe as well. So guys, maybe before we wrap up, some questions at the end. If you're a business in Switzerland that's aiming to implement AI, like where would you place the most amount of time in? Is it in the prompt engineering? Is it preparing the data for the AI system? Is it making a pretty front end? Is it thinking about the best models to use, or where would you place your valuable time as a Swiss business owner, or as a Swiss leader, or as a Swiss startup person that's interested in building an AI? Like, how do you think about that?
For that scenario, I think the best approach is to think about the flow. You need to think on the task that you want to achieve, and even me as an engineer, the best invested time is on the flow, understanding the flow. And after understanding the flow, of course, you will spend some time preparing the solution with RAG agents or with the prompting, but understanding the flow is the key.
Flow meaning what exactly, Ben? What flow are you talking about?
The flow, let's say a chat solution. You want to understand the flow of the conversation. What do you want the bot to do? What do you need? What's the use? Like for instance, on a use case for, let's say, for a chat solution, you reach the chat. What do you want for it to do? You want it to just answer some questions for the client. You want it to send some emails, to schedule an appointment, to collect information through voice. You want to understand the flow of the product that you want to build. And as an engineer, if I have the flow defined, it's very easy for me to build a solution.
So you're saying basically the actual problem where you would spend most time as a Swiss business is really understanding the pain that you're trying to solve, as opposed to just thinking about the best possible way of engineering it. I do believe it's a good notion. What do you think, Joao? If you have limited time, what would you be doing?
I think a company spent the last 10, 15 years like building up the data storage and data solutions, and they've been gathering data about everything and everyone. But it's not really centralized. They weren't planning for GenAI, like no one was. And so you're trying to build a solution with GenAI. You're trying to use your own company's data for it, like to augment the agents or the agent to interact with your data. You have to spend some time to actually centralize the data, or have like connections and connectors to all these different places you're gonna have the data probably. Like you had this idea of like lake storage. Yeah, I think they call it like that usually. Lake storages, where they aggregate a bunch of data for a bunch of different sources, from databases, from files, again, usually PDFs. All this data is a different format, so you'd have to spend some time to find a way to break it down and give it to the LLM. Otherwise, you'd have like the equivalent of ChatGPT, which is a really good solution, like really powerful, but it doesn't know anything about your own personal company. Like if you go to ChatGPT and you ask something about your company and it does know, it means your company's data is somewhere on the internet, and you might have fun to take a look at it.
I think it's a perfect ending for this episode. I do believe that AI in 2025, if we assume this is the year, which we believe it is actually coming down mostly to be a data problem and to be a data readiness problem as opposed to an AI engineering problem. So most of the businesses that first need to think probably a decent amount of time, how do they get the data up to date? How do they get the data available, data products, stuff like that, as opposed to already thinking what's the most fancy LLM we can use? Because this changes every 2 weeks probably. So I think it's a perfect time to wrap up, gentlemen. Thank you for the first episode. Of course, it was our inauguration, so it will be a bit less shaky next time, hopefully. But yeah, for the audience, we plan to do this every single week. Just give some updates from the insights of people and experts engineering around AI, agentive AI in Switzerland. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. And we see you in the next episode of This is the Year. Take care and have a good week.
See you around.
Good. Let me stop that, not to get it